Hello, Marlene. Welcome to Speaking of Everything. I have a very, very interesting guest on the program. My guest is first local St. Martin notary, Mrs. Mingo. How are you doing?
Hello, Arul. Thank you for having me here.
Well, good to have you in the program. You're a hardworking person. You're a local person. How you feel about being the first notary in St. Martin to be from St. Martin? Because back in the olden days, they came from the Netherlands. They came from all over.
Yes. Well, actually, I have to be very thankful for my predecessor, Mr. Francis Gijs Bertha,
Yeah.
who was a notary before me. And actually, I was a tax inspector at a tax office.
Uh-huh.
And he approached me and he said, I think you would be a very good candidate to become a notary.
Oh, so he approached you.
Yes.
Oh, that's good.
And I said, well, yes, I'm up for a change. After having worked there after 5 years at the tax office. And that's how actually the ball started rolling. But I have to say, though, that when I was 15, my dad did brought it up to me.
Yeah?
Yes, he did say, Marlene, I think a notary would be perfect for you. And I just laughed at him and said, come on, Dad, that's nothing for me. And look at me now.
Yeah. But your father was a remarkable person. He shared his ideas and opinions with everyone on the island. He never shied away from answering questions. Great person.
Yeah, and very important. I always tell everyone that so too, is that he was of the opinion. My father, by the way, is Mr. Frank Elliott Mingo, for those that don't know. But he was always of the opinion that education gives you your freedom and independence.
Which is so important.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
When you came back and you said you was at the tax office, and how long did you work there as a...
Well, I was first, because in my first profession was, of course, I'm a tax lawyer. So I started, I was working in the Netherlands in the private sector, and I wanted to come back home. And therefore, I wanted to do something for the country, for country St. Martin, at the time, Island Territory St. Martin. And I applied, and I was hired first by the receiver's office, and to help them with the collection, etc. And then it appeared that a tax inspector was needed, and that was right in my alley. So that's when I was switched over. I was transferred to the tax office to become one of the tax inspectors there.
We've come a long way, because, and I recall in my younger days, tax inspectors came from Curacao, most of them.
Yes.
In the field of notary, I remember Patience being, I think, the first notary I can recall on the island.
Correct.
Again, from Holland, and then we had Gijs from Curacao. We had others from all over. So I think when people see and hear that you're from St. Martin, they're surprised in a way.
Well, yes, I can imagine that, but it takes discipline, and it takes courage, and it takes determination, of course, to go there and study. And however, people have to also understand that it's sacrifices you have to make. But once you have reached here where you are, it brings a good, let me say, earnings, income, and it's secure, because once you have been appointed as notary, you have this position, you're being in this position until you have reached the age of 65 years. Once you have reached the age of 65 years, you have to step down and retire.
Well, then you bring to the job a wealth of experience based on your background as a tax lawyer and everything else, right?
Yes, it's very convenient. Yes, yeah. It's an addition, of course, to my work experience. However, I cannot advise on tax matters within my position as notary, because as notary, you still have to remain impartial. You
Oh.
can, however, advise the client to go that way or another way to avoid or limit having to pay taxes, for example, transfer tax, succession tax, etc.
People complain about that one, right?
Yes, but when it comes to taxes, it always becomes an issue.
I think the transfer tax on Dutch and Martin is still lower than the French side, if I'm not mistaken.
The transfer tax on the Dutch side is 4%. It's even lower than on the Best Islands.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now the politician here that they might jack it up.
Well, what is the issue right now, I can say, is that, for example, if you have transfers of immovable properties or acquisitions from immovable properties, when it comes from an estate or when you are donating within family circle or so, then the succession tax, which is recorded in the law, has not been applied for the last 20 years.
Okay.
So that is something, the government is missing a lot of income there. And because when it comes to transferring by a sale, then you pay 4% transfer tax over the market value or the purchase price in case the purchase price is higher than the market value. And you can imagine if I am donating property, there's no taxes, so the government will not receive any taxes on that transaction.
But it's on the books?
Yes, it is on the books.
And what's the percentage if they had to implement?
That depends on the value. It's in tariffs, different scales actually. Yeah. So it's not really that you can see it's a fixed tariff. It's in different scales, just like, for example, the income tax.
And it makes it a little complicated sometimes because depending on what the person wants to do with the estate, they're worried that down the road that might be applied and then becomes an issue.
Well, since it hasn't been levied, since the succession tax hasn't been levied for the last 20 years, of course that's a great precedence to bring forth should you ever get a assessment for the succession tax. And the period also for succession tax is 5 years. So if the tax office or the tax authorities don't give you an assessment within 5 years, then this claim will expire.
Oh, okay. And St. Martin is a unique island, though, because we have all of these huge pieces of land owned by different families and so forth, and it's becoming more of an issue today now when they want to divide it.
Yes, that's the sad part, because you have families. You had families in the past that had acquired or purchased properties. And what is so amazing is that you see people that were registered, for example, in the slave books. And they, with their little guilders that they have, they purchase land. It's so amazing, so impressive to see how people were thinking with the business mind, etc. And now we are sometimes 20, 30 years further, and no one has done anything with the land. Then when you get, as notary, you get sometimes now family members requesting to have the land subdivided. But of course, when there is land, unsettled estates for 20 or 30 years, it's very difficult for a notary to have that settled, because remember, you have generations come and go, and also often people that went away, traveling for education, and live elsewhere, settled elsewhere. Every and each person being part of that estate will have to comply and will have to cooperate in getting the subdivision done. And often of course, a costly transaction.
So then they'll have to go to an attorney to have that done? Or?
Yes, it would be best to hire an estate attorney who has, of course, experience with that. And they can always have the notary there for advice. But it becomes a very costly and time-consuming transaction to having to execute. Sometimes you also have to get legal advice from abroad. For example, if if the land was from 3 generations ago, and some of the generation let's say 3 generations ago, we call it generation 1. Then you have generation 2, perhaps some of those family members left abroad, also passed away, and of course that becomes a foreign estate. So have your foreign estate from within a St. Martin estate, so you need to get that settled, and sometimes you come at an impasse and you can't move forward. It only takes one person, one family member that will not cooperate, and the estate cannot be solved and settled.
And as a notary, you see any legal changes in the law down the road to maybe adjust for that?
It is very, it will have to go via the courts in order to settle these. There is legislations, but of course a very lengthy and costly procedure, and again everyone has to.
And most of the time, these families don't have the money.
Correct. Yes.
They're rich in land but poor in cash.
Yes. You can always try to get an investor involved, but I also have to say, with us as Caribbean people, St. Martin people, we have our pride, and we don't like to let go of our land.
Yeah, we love land. No, it's amazing because when you look at St. Martin, for a little island, and you were mentioning earlier, you can see all the transactions that took place a long time ago.
Yes.
When we had slavery on this island.
Yes.
It's unique when you look at this island, how many local people have so much land, but they can't use it.
Correct.
Yeah. And I notice, like we see, like in the paper, a lot of different auctions and so forth. You handle some at your notary firm also. Are auctions like the last alternative to selling a property? And are you seeing more local people in this problem?
An auction is usually because there was a creditor. There's a creditor and a debtor. The debtor is the owner of the land or the property or a home, and that the creditor wishes to execute his or her rights to have the property sold on a public auction, because the debtor is not forthcoming with his or her payments for the land, for the loan that was used for acquiring the land, or for maybe perhaps a mortgage that was established on the land, on the property. And as a notary, of course, that's the last thing you want to do. But you will tell the debtor or mortgager, you will advise them, hey, try to settle it with the bank or with the creditor before I will proceed and put your property up for auction, which is not a nice thing, of course.
Yeah. Are you seeing more and more local people falling
in arrears? Yeah. Whether yes, you do see that, but it's not only the locals. It's also corporations and companies.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. And when you look at the island, we look like a booming island, and everything is working well. But if you go back to 2017 with Hurricane Irma and then the pandemic, a lot of things have changed, although we're picking up now, right?
Yes, but like you say, like we always know, St. Martin is a very booming island, but there's always a constant shift. You have people coming and you have people going. You have, for example, Americans and Canadians come here and live here, coming for the winter time and then going back home for the summertime to be with their families. But when these occasions, when these for example, the hurricane season, hurricane passes over like we had with Irma, but also with the pandemic, you see a shift. You see people moving out But then you see another shift also, people come into the island. You can imagine also if people get older, people that are here, staying here, but not really residents, they get older, for health reasons, sometimes they have to go back to their country, which is also, of course, a move. But you see another, again, younger people, younger families coming back to the island.
Do you find Americans come to you and find it strange that they don't need an attorney to buy a property like in America, that a notary can handle everything?
Yes. In the U.S. you have common law. In our Dutch system you have the civil code, and our position as civil law notary is very unique because we're impartial, yet we handle the transaction all alone by ourselves. We represent. We have to look into the interest of the buyer, but we also have to look into the interest of the seller and make sure that everything goes well. In the U.S. or in other common law countries, you have a lawyer for every party, so it can become very lengthy and of course difficult. Next to being a notary, which is also different in other countries, I will be the notary handling the transaction. I will also be the escrow agent handling the funds. Okay, so that is also something that is not being done in other countries.
So the funds will be given to you on a special account, right?
Yes, correct. I have an escrow accounts, dollar and guilder, and there the funds have to rest, stay in escrow until the transaction is final, and then I will transfer the funds to where they have to go.
So it's not advisable to go around that when you're dealing with the notary?
Well, I always advise people when you're going to purchase a property, get in contact with a notary. We will advise you accordingly, and we will always advise you not to pay out any funds to the seller unless you trust the seller. But you can imagine if you have paid the seller and the seller then leaves, how are you going to get back your money? While if it's in escrow at the notary and you cancel, the notary may request you for a small administration fee or whatsoever, but then you'll get your funds back.
You're safe. Your money is safe.
Correct.
Right. In case you just joined us, I'm Earl Gibbs here and speaking about everything on YouTube, Facebook, and on Hot 99.9 FM radio. My guest with me is Mrs. Mingo, St. Martin's first local notary. We're happy to have her here. She's a standing lady. When we come back, we're going to continue speaking with her right here. And speaking of everything, please stay with us.
We are vibrant, expressive, warm, and diverse. Together, we conquer, and now we expand into new horizons, giving you more of the best. Introducing our new Bankomatico Plus with wider acceptance, purchase protection, and enhanced security. Whether you're online, traveling, or in paradise, experience more with Windward Island Bank. Bankomatico Plus, more of the best.
Hello, Moji here, and speaking of everything with Mrs. Mingo, our local notary, and we're happy to have her here in the program. Now, this has been the second time I had you on this show, you remember? I did many years ago.
That's good.
It's always good to have you here, because I like your style and how you explain things, make it very simple that the average person can understand. But when it comes to notary now, what are some of the other things you do as a notary that you think we need to know about?
Okay. Very important is when you need a signature notarized or legalized on documents, you will need a notary. Very important, for example, is that parents would have their minor children travel on the airline with someone else or with a flight attendant, given the airline permission. You have to do that at a notary.
Really?
Yes, because they will need to know that the signature that was granted, that was given for the power of attorney for that minor child to travel, that was indeed the signature of that parent. And we will look into that and we will make sure that has been done. And so it's very important when your child is traveling, contact the airline, but also contact a notary, especially when it comes to traveling of minor children. So we do legalizations and or notarization of signatures on any kind of document. You just have to come to the office, identify yourself with the original passport or St. Martin ID, and the document, I will have to see it, preferably send it by email so I can review the contents, because I'm not going to notarize your signature on any illegal document.
Right.
And what we also do is, for instance, if you need fingerprints for documents in other countries, fingerprints, if you need, for example, the transactions with immovable properties, when it comes to family law, estates, but also on the corporate side, when you want to found or incorporate a business, so a BV, NV, so companies, foundation, an association. I also do subdivisions of properties. If you want to start an apartment building, that's also procedure for the notary. Does everything when it comes to immovable property. But also window services, when you want a power of attorney, as I said before, the notarization and legalization of your signature. Also, if you want an authenticated copy of, for example, your passport, of your of any document you wish or need a authenticated copy for other instances or organizations, we can do all of that.
Well, it's quite interesting. Do you get local people coming for, say, apartments or subdivision like?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you have people that have a parcel of land and they want to invest by putting an apartment building on that land. Then, of course, you need to go to the notary.
It's quite interesting because there are certain covenants in deeds that go back a long way. I can tell you, because where I live, one of the conditions in the deed is that if you build a house on that property and you didn't follow the covenant, the deed, you have to pay $100,000.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yes, that's correct. I also, that's the fine, the penalty actually for not being or not keeping yourself up with a covenant, the terms and conditions applicable to that property.
And it's recognized by the courts.
Yes, correct. And it has to be, there's a perpetual clause. A perpetual clause is like, it has to be going over from one deed to the next. Yeah. So if it was in this deed, it will have to go over to the next if you're selling that property or if you're transferring that property. I, however, had a very interesting case, is that I had a person that still wanted to take the penalty for his or her risk and say it is worth the investment I'm going to make for the apartment building on that property, which is very interesting.
Yeah, no, I did the same thing.
Yes.
I had the same experience and I did the same thing, because when you look at the value of property anyway, it's better off to pay it than to have to not pay it and have go through all that legal fighting. Yes. You're going to lose anyway.
Yeah.
You know? But when you look at the island and notary, it's amazing how things have changed. I remember as a little boy, and our parents had something to do. It was very simple. They go to build a house, they go to the notary, things sign off. Today it's become kind of complicated. Maybe I don't get it, or maybe I make it sound more complicated, but it has changed quite a bit, I find.
Well, you have a lot of regulation, policy, legislation in place.
That wasn't there in those days?
Correct. Or it was there,
but
it was there, but it was never enforced. Oh, okay. Yes. Or it has been fine-tuned now over the years, let me say it like that. And of course, there was a time also whereby, but that's also very interesting, the squatters' rights, the prescriptive rights, where people would then occupy your land while you would not be on the island or so, and it appears then that the person has been occupying your land for 20 years and up, and then eventually wants to claim squatters' rights, meaning in legal terms, prescriptive rights to that property. So you can imagine that becomes a whole different legal scenario, whereby imagine families having properties on St. Martin for decades, that is not, of course, the situation you want to be in. There are, for example, when you want to build something, you can have land in ownership,
Yeah.
but you can also have land which was issued by government, being long lease.
Yeah.
So those are also, the long lease is also subject to terms and conditions which you of course have to adhere to apply to. And then you have, for example, if you want to build something, you need a building permit. I mean, in the 70s, 80s, that wasn't even necessary.
Exactly. I was thinking about that, yeah.
So that is indeed how we came about and how things got complicated. Not only complicated, but more costly.
But at the same time, when you look at it, it's good in a way.
Yes,
Yeah.
because the way how the world is evolving,
Yeah.
you need to have things established and documented.
What do you think surprises people most, you as a notary, that you experience from local people? Is there a pattern of something that they say, wow, I noticed that this is an issue, or I didn't know this, and you see that from a lot of local people?
It is usually, the issue is usually when it comes to estates, that people don't understand that when it comes to an estate, you and your siblings, and of course your mother, the surviving mother or the surviving father, you all will have to cooperate. If you don't cooperate and you're thinking about yourself and wanting and going after whatever division or part of land you want to have, it's not going to work. I'm giving an example. You can have a brother and a sister, two persons entitled to one parcel of land. But then the question is, how are you going to divide the land? Do I want the northern part? Do I want the southern part? Do I want the eastern part? Or do I want the western part? Because sometimes, depending on where the sea is situated, the view is situated, it's all can, if you have to divide the land, it, depending on how you divide it, it can have a different value. And there's where you usually have the issue that cooperation is needed from all heirs. An heir is someone that is entitled to an estate.
Or they can just flip a coin and see who got head or tail.
Yes,
It's
but
too simple, right?
and then flip the coin and make sure you have documented that.
When they come to the notary, they come to you and they say, okay, you're going to be there to ensure that it's done the right way.
Yes, but then again, the notary also makes it clear from the very start that if there is no cooperation, I'm going to put my pen down and you all have to look for a lawyer.
But no, this is hypothetical. My brother and I fighting over a piece of property. We can't decide. So we're going to come to Notary Mingo and we're going to flip a coin. I want head, he wants tail. Is that legal? Can that be done or it can't be done like that?
Well, what I would then do is the way how to, first we have to set the terms and conditions, how we're going to divide the land. And then I will say, well, we can use the heads or tail.
Okay.
I will make a notarial report of that and make sure to document everything, and you have to uphold that notarial report, the agreement, because it's actually an agreement, and make sure that it's a notarial deed in a notarial form so that everyone signs. And if anyone wants to change or whatever, then you can start a court case. But then again, court case, money involved. That's it. Yes, correct.
Yeah. So do they invite you to the schools to speak to our young people?
Oh, yes.
That's
and
nice.
I've had schools also come visiting me. Right now we're having, it's sad to know, but right now the notaries do not have a candidate notary.
On the island?
There's no candidate notary.
The 3 notaries?
Yes, so we have 3 notaries, and there are no candidate notaries. We don't have a candidate notary.
Wow.
So often we hear, well, why don't you put more notaries on the island of St. Martin? But if you don't have candidate notaries, how are you going to have notaries? Because in order to become a notary, you first need to be a candidate notary. How do you become a candidate notary? You have to go and study law, notarial law, have a master's degree in that in the Netherlands. And right now in Curacao, they have also started the course
In Curacao?
in Curacao, so which is very interesting. So and then once you have the master degree in notarial law, then you have to of course work at a notary office to get your experience. And once you get your experience, after 3 years, you can deputize or assist the notary. So that you get that experience also, and then you can become eligible to be appointed as notary once the notary wants to step down.
Well, I think it calls for a special person to know it. The reason I say that, I've seen you work and how you deal with people. Some notaries can be very dry and really don't give you the information in a very simple form, you know. You're not like that. You're really down to earth, and not other notary too that's similar to you the same way. And you're all are women. They're no men. The first notary that I recall I told you about earlier in the show was Patience. That was a man. But I think women do a better job at explaining to men the whole issue of what they have to do.
Well, I think it's very important, and I think maybe the mother role that a woman has, because imagine you have to explain children also things very simple. So I think it's very important that the client, because it also it stipulates it when you're studying for notarial law, the most emphasis that is being put on a notary is the obligation to inform the client. The client has to understand what they're being confronted with and what they're signing. If you haven't gone way and beyond to inform the client, the notary can be held accountable and liable for that.
You know, it all depends on style, because I know you and Mrs. Buchhout explain things very, very clearly. And when I jump back, I could remember the first time I had to deal with a notary. It was Patience. And it was very dry. Not putting him there, it was very dry. This, did you sign it? Blah, blah. No real kind of interaction. That was my experience. Nothing bad with that. I knew him well. He was a great guy. But when I look at how you operate and how Buchhout operate and how you explain and sit there in detail, I'm not really a guy for detail. But I noticed that with you, especially in Buchhout, you really go that extra length of letting the client know exactly what's involved.
Yes, it is also required from the notary to do so, because we have to first of all do our due diligence, make sure that what we are declaring is indeed correct, and that it is so, but that also that we can inform the client on what is required, why is it required, and the whole transaction and the procedure of that transaction needs to be explained.
So I didn't ask you this, I'm going to ask you this now. You love what you're doing because it's a lot of work, a lot of reading.
Yes, correct. And I spend lots of hours working.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's labor intensive.
Yes, very much. And I have at times, for example, that I'll wake up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and I come with a solution to a problem, and then I have to grab my laptop and work at it.
But it's good though. That
yes, I love my job. It's my passion. So that's a good thing. Do what you love.
And I hope that we'll have some candidate notaries soon.
Yes, I hope so too.
And I hope they're from St. Martin, because I don't want to put anyone down, but I think that it is so important. You can't build a nation without your people involved. And too often our young people are not getting involved for whatever reason. Maybe they're not aware of all of the possibilities and opportunities, but there's a lot of opportunity on St. Martin.
Yes. I do think though, because we were all young once, and I think that important is that you have passion for your country. That's first of all, passion for your country. And once there's passion for your country, there are many ways to contribute for your country. So I think that's very important. And then, of course, if you find a passion, then give it your fullest. Give it your 200%.
Well, I got to tell you one thing. Your mother, your late father, got to be proud of you all, because all three of you are professionals that came back to St. Martin and contributed by working here in St. Martin. That's good. You don't get that often.
Thank you.
Yeah. So anything else you want to add in closing?
Yes. If you have any questions, or if you have, don't act or don't sign anything before knowing what you're doing or what you're getting yourself into. There are so many sources out there, and try to get yourself informed before signing anything, because often you have people come in that already signed agreements or committed themselves to something, and then they put themselves in problems prior to having to ask a notary or a lawyer or anyone. Invest in information, invest in knowing what you're going to get yourself into.
All right. Again, your notary firm name is?
Notary Office Mingo.
Right. At the head of town.
Yes, correct.
Again, thank you. Much success. All right?
Thank you so much.
All right. And that's it for now here on Speaking of Other Things. I'll see you next time on YouTube, Facebook, and on Hot 99.9 FM radio. Take care. Bye.